Welcome to Learn Physiology. Today I'll discuss about the visual pathway. Actually, when we see an object with our eyes, the image is formed on the retina, and this image is inverted one, which is very smaller one than the actual image. And the image whatever formed on the retina, that is received by the photoreceptors present in the retina, that is the rod and cone cells. So this is the structure of the eyeball, and here this is the retina. Here the photosensitive pigments containing receptors are there, which are called as rod and cone cells. Rod cells are responsible for dim light vision, and cone cells are responsible for bright light vision, and also responsible for color perception. So if we look to the structure of the retina, the innermost layer, which is consisting of the nerve fiber layer. Thereafter we are having ganglionic cell layer. Thereafter we have bipolar cell layer. Then the rod and cone cells are present. And these rod and cone cells are actually located nearer to the choroid of the eyeball. So if we look to the light pathway, the path of the light through the retina actually first strikes the border where vitreous humor remains connected with the optic nerve forming cells, or there is the axons of the ganglionic cells. So light first strikes in the by ganglionic cell, then bipolar cell, and ultimately it strikes the rod and cone cells. And once they are stimulated, the informations from the rod and cone cells are being transported to the bipolar cells, and from there to the ganglionic cell, and the axons of the ganglionic cell, they are actually carrying the nerve impulses which are propagated to the occipital cortex for visual perception. So whatever the information supplied by the retina, they actually interacts with the different parts of the brain, especially in the occipital cortex, and then only we can go for conscious perception of the visual sense. So neuronal connections which connects the retina and the occipital cortex is the major source for the transportation of the information from the retina to the brain for visual perception. So we can say that the neuronal pathway through which visual impulse is produced in the retina passes towards the central nervous system for visual perception is called as visual pathway. So visual pathway can be defined as the neural connections which connects the rod towards the occipital cortex for the visual perception. This is the schematic diagram of the visual pathway. Later on we are going for discussion with it. Other than this transmission of the visual informations, the visual pathway also is responsible for sending the information to the specialized regions of the brain for adjusting the size of the pupil, for directing the eyes towards the targets of interest, and regulating the homeostatic behavior that are tied to the day and night cycle, which is called as circadian rhythm. So other than visual perception, it also helps in adjusting the size of the pupils, movements of the eyeballs, and regulating the circadian rhythm. Now let us look to the components of the visual pathway. So once it starts from the retina, it goes up to the optic chiasma through optic nerve, and after crossing over the optic chiasma, these nerves are now called as optic tract, and then it binds with the lateral geniculate body or lateral geniculate nucleus of the diencephalon, and from lateral geniculate body or LGB it goes up to the primary visual area or occipital cortex. We also can say it occipital cortex or Brodmann area 17 or V1 area via optic radiation or geniculocalcarine tract. So this is the diagrammatic representation. So you can see here the optic nerve is coming towards the optic chiasma, and after coming to the optic chiasma, it is then again called as optic tract, and from optic tract it is going up to the lateral geniculate body, and through optic radiation it passes towards the occipital cortex for or striated cortex for the visual perceptions. And the collaterals from this primary visual pathway are sending to the different regions of the brain for controlling different functions. So it is sending to the hypothalamus for regulations of the circadian rhythm. Then it is sending to the another nuclear structure which is called as pretectum, which reflexly control the pupillary diameter and the lens. And then the superior colliculus, which is responsible for orienting the movements of the head and eye. So these are the collaterals which are going to the different parts of the brain for controlling different reflexes. And some connections are also going to the parietal lobe and temporal lobe for which are concerned with the motion of the object and object recognitions also. So now let us check the or look to the visual pathway. That is, the ganglionic cell axons exit the retina through the circular region in its nasal part called the optic disc, and it form the optic nerves. Let us see, this was the optic disc. From here through this region, actually the actions of the ganglionic cell pass out from the eyeball. So actions in the optic nerves then run straight course to the optic chiasma at the base of the diencephalon. So it is going up to the diencephalon, and at the level of diencephalon, and the lateral geniculate body is there. So we can say that the optic nerve which is coming out from the eyeball, it is going up to the optic chiasma, and from optic chiasma it is going up to the lateral geniculate body. So optic nerve, it is coming out from the eyeball, and what actually happens at the level of optic chiasma, there is a partial crossing over of the nerve fiber occurs. That means you can see here, this is the neuronal connections or the nerve fibers which are coming out from the temporal part of the retina, and these are the nerve fibers which are coming out or which are carrying the informations from the nasal part of the retina. And very interestingly, the nasal part of the retina is responsible for collecting the information from the temporal part of the visual field. This is the visual field of the right eye. This is the visual field of the left eye. And here you can see the nasal part of the retina is responsible for collecting the information from the temporal part of the visual field, and temporal part of the retina is responsible for collecting the information from the nasal part of the visual field in case of left eye also. And the fibers, they are optic nerve fibers which are coming towards the optic chiasma. You can see here the fibers which are from the temporal part of the retina, they follow the same side to reach up to the lateral geniculate body, but the fibers from the nasal part, they actually crosses over at the level of optic chiasma, and they reaches up to the next level, sorry, the opposite side of the lateral geniculate body. So this is a partial crossing over of the nerve fiber occurs, and after the crossing over, these nerve fibers are now called as optic tract, and this partial crossing over is called as decussation. So we are talking about this one, the partial crossing over or decussation of the ganglionic cell axons at the optic chiasma level occurs. After that, the actions of the ganglionic cells in the nasal cross the optic chiasma, whereas those from the temporal retina, they do not cross. Once past the optic chiasma, the ganglionic cell axons on each sides they form the optic tract. Now let us say the so few fibers, most of the fibers are coming towards the diencephalon. Most of the fibers are coming towards the diencephalon, and from diencephalon they are going up to the occipital lobe via internal capsule, and this is the part of the primary visual pathway. This is the part of the primary visual pathway. Few fibers goes to midbrain, and from midbrain it goes up to the pretectum and superior colliculus, and then these are for the pupillary light reflex and orientation of the movement of the head and eye. Now let us see about some peculiarities of the distributions of the nerve fibers at the level of lateral geniculate body. Look at this. The lateral geniculate body itself consisting of the 6 layers: first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Among these, they are getting some uh, different types of connections like that. As for example, the ipsilateral connections are coming towards the second, third, and fifth layer. That means the temporal fiber from the suppose from the right eye is coming to the second, third, and fourth layers of the lateral geniculate body of the right side, and the fibers from the left eye, that is the nasal fibers, which are coming from the nasal part of the retina, they are giving their connection towards the first, fourth, and sixth layer of lateral geniculate body, and this is contralateral connections. And another peculiarity is there, these 6 layers are also being connected by two different types of ganglionic cells. So let us see what are the different types of ganglionic cell. In the retina, we can have the two types of ganglionic cells. One are very large ganglionic cells, others are very small ganglionic cells. The large ganglionic cells are called as M cells, and small ganglionic cells are called as P cells or Parvo cells. These are called as magnocells, and they add responses. In case of large ganglionic cells, they can add responses from the different cones, and Parvo cells or P cells are responsible for subtraction of the input from the one type of cone from the another type of cone. And these type of cells are large ganglionic cells are mainly responsible for, or they are concerned with, the movements and stereopsis, whereas the P cells are responsible for color and texture and shape of the object perception. Then look at the layers. So layer 1 and layer 2, they are connected with the M cells, that is the last type of ganglionic cells, and they are responsible for what I told earlier. They are responsible for detection of the movements, flickers, and stereopsis. And layer 3, 4, and 5, and 6, they are responsible for color vision, texture, shape of the object, and finer details of the object. So two types of connections are going to the brain. One is magnocellular pathway and another is parvocellular pathway. Now let us see what are the other collaterals, the major important collaterals, uh, that is the connections which is coming towards the pretectum of the midbrain. So the second major target of the ganglionic cell actions is a collections of neurons that lies between the thalamus and the midbrain, and the region is known as pretectum. This pretectum, so here you can see this is the pretectum nucleus. It is getting the connections from the lateral geniculate body, and this pretectum is again giving these connections towards the another structure which is called as Edinger-Westphal nucleus. So connection to the pretectum is the initial components for the pupillary light reflex pathway in bilateral projections from the retina to the pretectum. So in the same other side also they are getting the connections. So then what actually happens, these cells, they are sending these neurons are sending the impulses towards the Eringia-Westphal nucleus, and pretectum of left side giving their connection to the Eringia-Westphal nucleus of the both side, that is the left side as well as the right side. Similarly, in case of right-sided pretectum also, they are giving their connections both to the both Eringia-Westphal nucleus, that is the left and right. So they are both of them are getting connected, and that's why in case of pupillary light reflex, if you strike the light on a particular eye, the pupil of this eye also you will constrict, and side by side the pupil of the other eye also will be constricted, if even if it is not being exposed to the light. So Edinger-Westphal nucleus, then what actually happens, it sends its preganglionic parasympathetic fiber to the ciliary ganglion, and from ciliary ganglion the postganglionic nerve fibers are going towards the ciliary muscles, that is the pupillary constrictor muscle. You can see here, this is a postganglionic fiber, parasympathetic fiber, which is coming towards the pupillary constriction muscles and responsible for constriction of the pupil. So this is the summarized information about the connections of the pretectum and Edinger-Westphal nucleus. And again, I want to mention the connections from the lateral geniculate body goes towards the occipital cortex via optic radiation, and here it is giving their connection to the to the occipital lobe for visual perception. Thank you very much for watching.